Well, okay, my friends, I think I have found something that may have an impact on cancer. I'm not sure of that, but there's like hundreds of cancers, over 100 cancers, and every one of them relates to a specific organ, and I think it's got to do with the fascia. I've been studying this a very long time. This paper was from 2015, and now I think I have found the drain that sends that fluid to the next organ and I think there might be a little tiny organelle in there that affects the chemistry of the fluids moving from one membrane area to another. And that might be why there's so many cancers. Now this is going to go a little, it won't go that long, but hopefully you'll understand why I'm making these statements. I can show you the actual body parts I'm talking about. I have them here under the microscope. You'll see them. All right, this is the paper I did about fascia and my fossils and why the fossils were protected so well because of this fascia. And this was 2015. I presented all this stuff to everybody, all the top people, Yale and all of them. And Yale agrees with that. They wrote a paper on in 2016, basically said the same thing I'm saying. Now, except they don't understand the fascia. Forget about Yale. I claimed back then fascia is a tubular, fluid-filled fabric network. Instantly reconfigures itself if it's damaged or pulled apart. It's so fine, it's a web that completely coats everything in your body. All right? It's a coating on every fiber of your entire cellular structure. It is the web of life. Ancient times they called it tunica. And it protects you when you're dead just as good as it does when you're wet. If you're in wet, muddy conditions, which are mud is nothing more than eroded flesh. So it doesn't even know you're dead. See, I said, guess what? If you die and buried quickly and stay wet and compacted in fine mud, fascia does not know you're dead and keeps protecting you. This is the cause of mud fossils. They allow transition metals and things to come in through those membranes, but they keep everything else out. It's fabulous preservation. Mud fossils are exact copies of original creatures separated on the fascia and skin separation planes, right on these skin and everything. Fascia separates every cell and structure from its neighbor in life and death. Fascia protects every bit of you from invasion, including complete fabric bag that's your skin. That's nothing more than fascia, but it's on the outside. Your skin is not just one fabric either. You got tough skin, you got fine skin, you got thin skin. All fascia is made of collagens and keragens, the fabric creating fiber, and elastins, the sheets of plastic that wrap everything. It wraps everything individually and then comes together as one giant system. Well, guess what? They didn't even know about this. This is 2015 I wrote this paper. 2018 they said, yes, this layer does exist. 2018, so that's a 3-year gap. Now, I found something else about this layer. I believe there's a separation between organs right at the pinch point where they attach. I'm going to show you that right now. Okay, my friends, this is the 2 spots that I'm talking about to transfer the fluid from this latch to the next body part, whatever that might be. I don't know what it is, but let me back this up so you can see the whole specimen at once. All right, let me focus in a smidge, if I can. All right, there's those 2 spots. So let me crank up the light a little bit. All right, this is all, it's just a big glob of muscle. And this thing came around and latched onto the other body part and transferred its fluids through this membranous bag, through these little tubes, and right out there to the next one. And that's a rock that I have here. I learned a ton from these rocks, which were body parts. And here's where the major investment is right there. That's where it locks in. So let me just turn this thing around. All right. That's the main latch right there. And that anchors this whole body part, fascia. Now, I'm not saying it anchors the whole body part, but it anchors the fascia. So the fascia is not anchored like a tendon, or well, it's like an aponeurosis tendon. It's all of that tendon comes together. I'll show you in a second. And it comes together, boom, right here, snaps right in, and then the two tubes come down and come out the end as I have shown you. Well, I showed you anyway, but look, you see how this is just nothing more than red meat. And as it goes back from that, past the latch right there, and it continues on back, and is like a thin coating of everything. Just the way the chicken is, I'll show you right now. Oh, another shocker du jour. This right here, that little flap, with that little gnarly looking spot right there, is the same as that, identical. And this splays out all over just the way that does. You see? That's the chicken. The breasts open up. Now each one of those was in its own separate plastic bag. When I say plastic, it's made out of fascia. And it comes down and it gets tighter and tighter down here. And it actually changes. And I'll show you. I have this preserved. I have some that I'll show you in a microscope in a minute. And it drains the fluids that were in those bags through the tips here, which I just showed you, coming out of this one. I think I just showed you the two little dots on the end. That's where those two dots are. Now, I have several examples of this, which I'm going to show you in a microscope. And one of them is this lung, which is a Mudfossil lung. That's where the tubing went down into the lung. I don't know where it's from, but it's every lung and every body part has to lock to the next thing. And there is the lock on this one. You might be able to even see the fibers there. I'm going to show you in a microscope. You see it easily. This one has completely been, all of its pleura is gone. Some of them have complete pleura on them, and some of them have no pleura at all, and some of them, like this one, still have all the alveoli full, and some of them, like this one, the alveoli are gone. All of the contents of it is, this one here solidified, lost all its coating, but retained all the contents of the alveoli. It's kind of unusual, but it gives me the opportunity to see that is absolutely no question it's a separate organ from everything else. That's not anything like anything here, or nothing like anything once you get into the fascia. It is a separate organ on its own. All right, so let's get into some biology. This, like I said, meet your interstitium, a newfound organ. It's scientists discovered a new organ which consists of fluid-filled spaces. It's the interstitium, which I wrote the paper on, 2015. This is 2018. They say, yes, it is a gigantic system that does the whole body, and that is correct. Now, since then, you know, I had studied it pretty good to that point. I knew quite a bit about it, but you keep learning if you just don't shut off, and I didn't. I keep looking at it because I'm thinking every organ has its own complete separate bag. It's like you got a bag here and it's separated completely, totally, except for these two little tubes that go in, which I have shown you. I know I showed you at least a couple of times. The little tubes come off of here. So here's that organ. Here's that latch coming out, and it latches into another organ. But in the meantime, I can see the two tubes come out, and they're not exactly the same. And I think one of them has an organ on it. Now, consider this. If this is true, this organ here, let's say, is a kidney, and it's got a lot of salts or whatever it has. The material inside here has to be protected by a membrane, but that membrane is going to be sensitive, I would think, to whatever the contents of the organ is, if it's acids or salts or enzymes or whatever it is. So I would say every organ is going to have a different type of fluid. So this organ, which is a big organ, it does, let's say, a kidney, as it secretes or it pushes its fluid out to go into the next organ. Let's say this is a bile or whatever it is. I think there's a little tiny organ on this tube that actually might change the chemistry. So, in other words, if it's salty here and acidy here, you got to do something. So the fluid is likely not going to be the same in both organs. I wouldn't think, but it is a global system. It's everywhere in your body, so it ties together everywhere. But it ties together through those little two tubes. It's not just like one big layer and there's another layer everywhere. No, there's layers around everything, and then the tubes come out. That's the key. That's what I was missing before. I thought it was just everywhere was this layer, and it is. It is. But it comes down to a pinch point, and at that pinch point you got those two tubes. I got a zillion lungs around here, and every one of them has that latch. That's right there. This has been DNA tested and CAT scanned, and it's flat as a pancake on the back from the Great Flood, and this is completely encased in its own pleura. This didn't erode whatsoever. But that's that latch. Now, if I put a little water on there, it turns red pretty quick. You see how red that's turning quick? I drilled holes in here to get blood out of there to test it, and it is DNA is human. But that is the latch. And I believe that right there is the two holes right at the very end, if you can see that. But that is the latch. And you see this? You see that? And you see this flap going across there? Let me show you another one. Now, they say, well, what's limestone? What's granite? Anything could be anything. It depends on where it died. This is, you'd call this pink granite or something probably. This is a small lung, but it's still pink granite. And the reason it's got the black and pink in there, because it's blood. That's the colors of blood, black and pink. Now, this has all the pleura stripped away from it, but you can see, if you know how to look, right there was where the plumbing came in. All right, this died in the Great Flood too. You see the back of it flat like that? And it got boiled out of creatures' bodies. Some of them it boiled the pleura off, some of it didn't. But remember on this one here, this is the way the lung fascia sort of separates. Same thing here. You see that flap right there? This one here, it comes down, and there's that flap that comes around, same flap. And you really can't see the two tubes in there, but you can see that is the flap that comes off the bottom, just like all of them. And that held it in the body so it wouldn't go floating around. Same thing like this one. All right, so, and it's tabbed up at the top too. There's a tab at the top, so it doesn't go all flying around. And this was where the tubing was for this, but the pleura has just re-encased it. Sometimes they just get totally denuded of the pleura, just like this one. This is down to the alveoli. I think I've shown you this. I know I have. And there's the latch. There it is right there. This is it. I have this just overwhelming amount of evidence. It's just got to be examined, and that's the key. Is it is refused by the teachers that are supposed to be teaching you, saying, look at this, we're going to look at that. Well, I don't see that happening, my friends. Not a whole lot. To deny that's a piece of meat, and that's the fascia, and this is called the spurlock. I coined that. And I'm doing more work than the doctors are. The doctors aren't doing what they're supposed to do. This is the layer that protects you from invasion. It's the layer that protects you. It's your membrane. They don't understand this. What has to be in there, in that fluid-filled highway, is enzymes and bacteria that, let me see, where is it? Right here. Right here. You see this? This is the layer they never knew was here before. And you know why they didn't know it was there? Because by the time the autopsy were done, that fluid flattened out, so they thought it was like a little piece of cardboard. No. It was a fluid-filled highway, and the fluids run through there, but they encase everything separately, and then go into a giant fluid-filled network that coats everything in your body. Just exactly what I said in my paper. Now, I like I say, I think I originally felt it was just one big web, and there was no separation like I'm showing you with those two tubes. But then when I started seeing the tubes, when I was looking at this in a microscope, I said, well, what the hell is that? Like, they look like two eyeballs looking at me. I said, whoa. And that's when I realized that that is the drains. And I think there's an organ on there. Let me show you. All right, so don't forget, this is the part we're looking at, and that's where the drains are. Otherwise, they're completely separate from everywhere else in your body. You can't be invaded by anything, or you're invaded, you're sick. All cancer is from invasion of membranes. Literally all sickness is from invasion of membranes. Something's getting through there to attack you. If you can protect yourself in that layer, which is this new layer that they've now agree is here, which is the interstitium, this little dark place on the bottom, that's where all your enzymes live and your bacteria and all that. They create the buffer zone between you and the rest of the world. That stuff is dispensable. Not here. This is something that something gets in here, it starts to grow, and it makes a tumor. So what am I possibly proposing? What is my hypothesis? Which I don't know if it's true or not, but I'm going to propose it. I'm saying that between every organ, where it attaches to the body proper, complete into the body, whatever, or it's into another organ, there's two tubes that come down, which I'm going to show you in a second. And I think one of them might have an organ on it. Because like your hair has a little sebaceous gland on it. There's organs all over your body, these little tiny organelles, little bitty secretion glands, which I don't think they've ever known. Well, I know they haven't known about these little tubes. I know that because I've talked to people that are anatomists, autopsy people and everything else. They no clue about this. Although they do understand the interstitial highway now, since that's been understood that it is this fluid-filled highway. But the fluids around every bag have to come together, and here's where they come together. Now, take a second. I'm going to turn off the lights here and make a little... You got to let your eyes focus in here and take your time to see what you're seeing. I said there's two tubes coming out, and there is. There's one here, and there's one here. And I think this is an organ. It could be, maybe yes, maybe no. And this is the tissue behind it that locks into the next organ or wherever. But you see how there's one tube coming out? You see the little tube? Take time to focus your eyes. All right, this is the separation between them. And I have a better shot at this after it was a little more worked on. But this is one tube, and this is the other tube. And they come up to service all of that wrapping around their breast. What's this? Why is that there? Is that just that the tube wrinkled back? I don't think so. I think there's something going on right here. Now let me show you a couple other shots of this, not this exact one, but another piece that shows these same tubes a little cooked, more cooked. I'm just showing you this to show you how they fuse in together, these tiny little glands. Every one of your hairs has a sebaceous gland on it, which oils it or does something to it, gives it some kind of nutrition for that hair. So this is how they fuse right into there. Let me show you something else. All right, let's talk this thing through. I have shown in my fossil here that it has the little dots. This is the same attachment that's in every body part, which attaches to some other body part, and the fluids have to flow together down through that stream. Now, I have shown that this is the part that we're going to be looking at, and it splays out to some heavy-duty fascia, exactly like this. This is exactly the same thing we have here. There's the tag right there, that little gnarly spot. And then it goes back here, heavy-duty, and then it turns into like meat up here where the meat is. That's just the way it is. Now, so this is what we're looking at, is that little tab down there. Now, my contention is those two little strips coming down have a possible gland on it, similar to like a sebaceous gland that ties in. And every single hair has one of these, so they're not, they don't have to be big to do something. Now, this again was a shot. Let me turn the lights off. Sometimes it helps, sometimes it doesn't. But this is one of the tubes, and this is the other one, and I think that's a gland. Now, this sort of anchors to sort of a globby mat that is the first thing that it encounters is this swash of stuff. This is not cooked at all. I just cut a little piece off the end of a piece of chicken, and here it is, right at the end of the piece of chicken comes down, and that's where all that cartilage comes together, and then the two tubes come down, see? Boom, boom. And I think right there, I think that's an organ. Maybe. That's speculation, but here's why I think so. Here's one that's been cooked. Now, look at this carefully. Look at the details. It's not just one big glob of stuff here and this stuff here. This is one of those tubes. All right, that's one of the tubes. This is the other tube. Now look at this. Look at that carefully. Why is that feeding off the edge like that? And what is it going into? What's this stuff here? You see, this is a different look to it. Now, is this part of that? It doesn't look like it. It looks like this is under this, laying over the top of it. And this was cooked. It tasted good too. Now, this, I don't know. Nobody seems to know anything about it. Let me put it that way. So it is unknown at this point what it is. But again, these are the two tubes, and this is all that cartilage stuff that anchors it. Somewhere back up in here would be the lock, the spur lock, which probably is right up in there somewhere. And that's the anchor, or yeah, I would say that would be it. Because it doesn't go much further than this. It comes out to about here. And all that other stuff is globby. Remember, let's go back to look at the before it got cooked. This is after cooking. This is prior. So there's this globby looking stuff all around the outside, and the two tubes coming down. And this only goes back to about here was where the cartilage was. All right, so tube and tube, and that looks to me like there's a tube feeding off of there. Feeding this, whatever it is. Speculation, but I also see this. You see this little white line here? That's nothing that's laying on top of there. That's something that's also part of this ductwork. And it comes down, and it looks to me like this is underneath this stuff. So this tube is just going in there, whatever it's going to do. This one is underneath all the globby stuff, but this globby stuff to me looks just like the sebaceous gland looking things. Now, what kind of chemistry is going on in there? I have no idea. Nobody does. Nobody even knows it's there, if it is there at all. But it looks to me like something is happening here and making something go on in an organic way, as like an organ would. That's all I can say. All right, some more or less final questions. First of all, if this was an organ right here that was in the middle of the transfer of this fluids and regulated something in it, whether it was, acids or salts or whatever, it secreted something in there, let's say, that could be a huge discovery. Because what would that mean? it would mean that every organ gets its own specific cancer, basically. So to me, the only way it can get a cancer is to invade a membrane. So every organ, I would think, has a separate type of membrane, or at least some kind of different chemistry in there. Or it reacts differently to the same kind of chemistry that's throughout the body. That's a possibility. I'm not ruling that one out. Every bit of chemistry in the body and the lymph system could be identical. And they just flow through here, and it's like, I don't even know if that has anything to do with anything. It just could be just a chunk of stuff hanging off the edge. But I do see it, not just here. I see it in other shots. Is it significant? I don't know. But if it was significant, and it regulated a certain type of enzyme or chemistry that was in a certain type of organ, and it didn't have the right chemistry there to regulate that organ, and you get cancer, that would be pretty important to know. Now, how would we know? You'd have to do autopsies on, you could do them on really like roadkill animals, not even go out and take a life of anything. And if they're fresh enough, you should be able to check this little piece out. Wherever stuff attaches, find those locks and take that piece out at the edge there and then examine it. Is there some different chemistry from this side to that side? You take a piece like this and you see, you do organ, this is a kidney and this is the heart, and they attach together, let's say. And you take that chunk and then you see, is there a different chemistry here and a different chemistry here in that layer, in these tubes. And like I say, I could be totally wrong, but I know for a fact they're in their own plastic bags. And I know for a fact those bags come to a tube like that, which is a double tube. One goes out and one comes in, I would assume. What we need to know is there some intervention going on here? Because that could be what cancer is all about. If you have to have a specific chemistry in a specific part of your body, and that organ's not working correctly, or you don't have the correct enzymes, which are from bacteria, to support that organ. Because organs, let me just say something about organs. They don't make anything. You know what I mean? They don't make anything. Zero. Nothing. Nothing is made by any organ in your body. Oh, Roger, come on. Yeah, well, I'll tell you what. What's making the chemistry is the bacteria that lives inside that factory. That organ is a factory. The organ is a factory. It's a workshop. You don't have the workers, which are the bacteria, to pump out the ribosomes, which are the enzymes, which are the catalysts, which do the chemistry. Nothing happens. So you could have all the fancy factory you want. Perfect. Everything's good. Your genetics are perfect. Your factory's working. Your organs are looking just absolutely perfect. You don't have the bacteria, you're done. You're going to get sick because it cannot protect you anymore. And I think right now I'm starting to feel I got a good feeling that there's something different in the chemistry of every one of these plastic bags. Your kidneys are not going to have the same plastic bag around it as your lungs, or as your pancreas, or as your intestines, or as your stomach. The acids, salts, all kinds of different chemistry going on there that you have to protect yourself from. And still be able to transfer fluids in and out. That membrane is just absolutely sophisticated as it can be. And they show it being kind of sophisticated, but nothing like it is. They have what's called ion channels. These ion channels are able to absorb and emit chemistry as it's needed through these different polarities. And they see it, they understand it's hydrophilic and hydrophobic, which one opposes water and one is a water lover. And water, to me, something's going on with the polarity of the water as it absorbs these aqueous solutions, which are transition metals. I don't show it here, but transition metals work in watery aqueous solutions, and they have all these polarities. Hold on a second. All right, this is just freaky. I'm up here looking at Mount Hermon, which is up here somewhere. And I'm looking for the biology, and I'm seeing the abrupt transitions and things like this. And then I look down here and I see this. And I see that's kind of a strange looking thing right here. What is that doing there? And then I come in and look at this. Check this out. It looks like they're terracing this. And growing crops probably there at one point in time. It doesn't look like it now. But look at this. This I find fascinating. This, I think, is one of those spurlock tags. And you see the two little tubes coming out the bottom? You see this? Look here carefully. This is all green over here. It's green. You see it's coming down? And that looks like a tube to me. You see that? And it's green. And then you see this thing here hanging off the edge of it. And look at that. That is very strange. Which looks exactly like what I showed you in the chicken tissue. This is the other side, and it's a different material. Obviously, this is green, this one's not. This is coming down and it's brown until they meet together. And then they actually cross over and feed whatever's down here. And you guys, this is biology. There's a lot of biology going on here. A lot of biology going on right in this area. Now, I would say, look at this carefully. All right, it comes down to that thing, and this thing right in the middle here. I have the exact same thing in my specimens. Exact. One side has one type of chemistry, the other has a different. One side is green, one side is brown. They meet up together. And this looks like an organ hanging off the side of there. What it is, I don't know. But I showed you that, and I'm going to show you one more time. Hold on. I don't know. This is just crazy. Because I'm seeing it coming, hanging right off the edge, and that little ball there could be what we're looking for. Or this whole thing could be the same color as that. And this is just hanging over, which this is part of that to make an attachment to the next organ. That's all I can see from this. All right, I'm going to leave it at this, but this was before it was even dried out even a tiniest little bit. It wasn't cooked, nothing. These are the two tubes that eventually turned into those tubes. This is the flesh surrounding it. And that's where these fluids were either going in, one is going in and out, whatever. But the two tubes. Now, look at this lump here. That I find interesting. I mean, I find the whole thing interesting. Could that be an organ? I don't know. It's not going to be hard to look into this and to test it. And then you could see if this rubber bag, the fluids that is in that, is different than the rubber bag down here, the fluids in that. And what's the difference? Is there different chemistry? Or is the same chemistry throughout your entire body? That would be very, very important to understand. Because if you have different chemistry in every single organ, and that relates to every single organ having its own type of cancer, you might be able to supplement whatever that specific fluids are in that specific organ. You may have to inject little bits into that specific bag rather than just take it into your whole body and hope it hits the bag at some point. This is kind of an important thing to look into. I'm not saying it has any significance. I don't know. But they fund things for billions of dollars, and I don't see a whole lot of progress. This would be something to test. I mean, I'm just showing you. So anyway, I love you all. It'd be a good thing to look into. And Bob Kennedy, Robert Kennedy Jr., I think he's got an open mind. Let's see what he can do. At least we can look at it. It's been actually forbidden to be looked at. And the same thing with fecal matter transplant, which is nothing more than putting new bacteria in somebody from somebody that has good bacteria in them. And it's poop. That's all it is. And that has the ability to repopulate another person's microbiome, which is where all these little critters live that create the chemistry. They are the things that actually break down other particles and make them available to do the jobs you need to have done, which means that they can go out and kill things, they can break down foods, they can assemble particles into needed minerals and things like that. That's their job. But if you don't have the bacteria, nothing happens. Bacteria creates enzymes. They're ribosomes. They float around through your body. When they're needed, they pop open and they do their job. All right, I love you all. Maybe Robert Kennedy Jr. can look into this. I'd love to work with somebody in all of the departments, because I have information on light and on electricity and all that stuff, which has just been denied. That's the problem. It's not that the information isn't there. It's been denied by the ones that were supposed to be teaching us and helping us and asking questions and answering questions. I have been blocked literally 100% across the board because they just think I'm crazy because of my Mudfossil stuff. And it's the same old thing. What's your problem with it? I wouldn't even look at that stuff because it's so crazy. Well, obviously you don't look at it because you don't understand it. And that's what happened to everybody. The people that block the other people never even look at their information. They did to Velikovsky when they pulled his books off the bookshelves after 11 weeks, #1 on the bestseller list. Velikovsky, 1950, Worlds in Collision. They took it off the bookshelves. They forced the publisher to remove it. The academics, or they said, we'll never buy another book from you. And Macmillan said, okay, we'll take it off the bookshelves. And then they went to interview the guy that pushed it so hard. And he said, well, what was it that he said that upset you so much? He says, I wouldn't read that trash. So he never even read it. And and right now we've got the same story right across the board in academia. I had the same thing happen to me at Fermilab. They said, don't ever contact us again. You're a tinfoil hat guy, and I will never look at a thing you have to show me. And that's from Don Lincoln at Fermilab. And he caused me an embarrassment to science and everything else. And we refuses to look, and we found the same particles he did 10 years ago. We're talking hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars wasted. And they're still wasting it today, and it's a fight for funding. That's how I see it right now. And that's not just here, there, or here. It's everywhere. All right, so I'd like to see some biology. I'd like to see some chemistry. I'd like to see dipole electron flood theory looked into deeply. The enzymes and the membranes, the significance of this, and the little latch in these tubes. I mean, it's right top to the bottom. Everything, history, all of that stuff has to be looked at in a whole different light. And I mean, it's just what it is. I cannot change that. Once these things have been discovered, they're discovered. You can't stop it. The only thing you can do is deny it. And then it's starting to, academia is starting to look very, very, very foolish. And if you don't think that's true, explain to me why that isn't true. All right, I love you all.